Hello AOS fans, Robin here. I'm back for a little painting tutorial. I'm going to paint some black Primaris Space Marines and some white Primaris Space Marines. I'm going to paint them in the traditional ultramarine colours. That's my intention anyway, more or less traditional. I might put a bit of variation in, show you some colour variation. Now I'm by no means an expert at painting. This is very much a beginner's tutorial for people who maybe haven't done it before or haven't done it for a while. There are some great tutorials out there, no less Zerastro. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to get on with this marine, see if you've actually got something to see. Now, I actually started doing this and I had just recorded on the camera, so I have some paint here already. This is the Citadel from the Citadel Essentials Cutters Brush and Paint set, and it's Macragge Blue. So I'm going to put the Macragge Blue on there now. It's always good to thin your paints. It's a bit of a classic. If you watch Warhammer TV, you'll know it's a classic phrase to thin your paints. But and the reason for that is you get much better coverage. You might need 2 coats, but you get better coverage over there like that. So there we go. So I'm going to leave the knee pads on this one. So it's always best. You can tidy as you go, but it's always best to try and get the paint where you want it straight away and try not to go on the bits that you don't want it on. Of course, I'm not very good at painting, so I regularly go over on the bits that I don't want to go on. So it's a hot day in the UK today, so your paint dries out very fast in those circumstances. Just a bit of water, extra blob of paint, a bit of water. Keep it nice and thin. Yeah, it keeps the paint flowing nicely over the area. Like I say, it might be a little bit patchy when it dries, in which case you just add a second coat. 2 thick coats is very much better than 1 thick one. It might seem a bit more tedious. I'm actually not sure it is. I'm not sure it takes you much longer to do 2 thin coats than 1 thick one. I'm actually going to keep going over that way. There we go. So I'm going to paint all of these with just these base colours, and then I will probably paint some where I haven't just used base colours. I talk about the Citadel range of paints in a future video. Anyway, you don't really want to watch me paint all of this, so I am going to finish this one off, and then when I have finished it, I will come back and talk about what's next. I'll finish off the blue anyway. I'm not going to finish the whole miniature, obviously, that would be silly. I'm going to paint this one blue, and then I shall be back in a second. Having painted some black ones with the blue colour, I'm going to do the same with the white ones. Now this is just for really so you can get a feel for what difference using the different paint makes. Now I may have to eat my words slightly. On the primary video I talked about how the Games Workshop paints didn't dry smooth. This white is not as smooth as that black was. I have to say I've never had any issues with the Chaos Black, Games Workshop's Chaos Black. I've never had any issues with that. It's the white I've had issues with too, and actually maybe white is generally worse. I don't know if anybody has any experience of that, because this white is a bit rough around the edges. It's not too bad, but the paint certainly isn't going on as smoothly as it did for the black ones. Anyway, again, I haven't got much to say about this particular one, so I'm going to just keep painting this. I'll come back to you when I've done them both. So we've pasted the base coats on these two here. Now, it might be difficult to tell in this shot, but actually the black at the moment is looking an awful lot better than the white. The white sort of shows up what you haven't painted, obviously, much more than the black, and you can see there. I'm not very accurate. I've got a splodge of blue on his head. Now I decided as I was painting how I was going to paint these. I like some of the imagery in the book. So these knee pads here and the helmet here and probably these hand bits here. I'm actually going to paint a variation on each of the models of blue and red, white and red, which is probably not canon as it were, but I'm going to give you a little bit of variation. There's several places to choose. Give me a little bit of variation on where to paint. So vary the models so they don't all look the same, but they all look uniform. So what I've got left to paint is I've got the leather here to paint, which I'm going to use Morphine Brown for. I'm going to paint the helmets white. I'm going to paint some of the knee pads white and some of them red. And I'm going to paint the guns silver and the edges of the boots silver. So I'm going to do that. I'll discuss a couple of different ways I might do the silver in a second. So let's get on with the Mornfang Brown anyway. That's the first paint. I'm going to paint up the leather on these. Let's see how we go. Again, I'm going to put a few bits on my palette and then thin it down. As we know, thin paint is the way to go. I did find with these, I don't know whether it was coincidence, I did find that the white was much more, or less smooth, much more grainy than the black. I don't know if that's a mistake I made with the spraying, or actually a side-by-side comparison shows that the Games Workshop spray is better, at least for the black, than the Army Painter white. So I think it was probably, I was a little tentative with the white. I think it's one of those things, you kind of need to be confident in what you're doing, and I've had a few problems with white, and so I think I feel nervous about it almost, and so I don't give it a full push. That's a technical painting term. Now I have noticed already, I don't know if you can see that, this starter paintbrush is already starting to split. I have painted more than two. I've painted some of the others off camera, I'll show you in a moment, but it is starting to split, and I actually had to give up trying to do any detail work with the slip brush. And I thought I'd cured it. I thought it was because it was very hot here in the world, very hot for the UK, very hot in my painting area, which I thought was making the paint dry really quickly down at the bottom here, causing the brush to split. And that might be the case, and I thought I got the paint out with a wash, but a proper wash under the tap kind of thing, not just rinsing it in here like that. I mean, we get some of the paint out, but I don't think when it's really dry, when it's really hot, I don't think it dries it fast enough, or it doesn't, or rather it doesn't wash it out before it dries in there. So I gave it a good wash out, but it doesn't. Now I'm just painting here. I thought I'd done it enough. It doesn't look like I have. I have got some brush cleaner, which is something you don't want to be worried about on a first go through. There are a few extra bits of detail on here which I hadn't discussed. I'm going to paint this belt brown. There's the buckle there. I'm going to paint that a variation of red and white as well, depending on the model. And for those of you new to the game, lots of these Space Marines have things on them called purity seals, which are basically like rosettes or wax seals, and they're traditionally done. See that this brush, I'm getting paint on my blue. Don't worry too much if you get paint on the blue. We will be doing a couple of steps on it anyway, so hopefully we'll cover that up. If it's really bad, we'll have to overpaint it with the blue. Yeah, I'm actually going to stop using this brush because it's just no good for anybody. There, now just off reach, off camera. I have my go-to brush. So this is my go-to brush. It's a Series 33 Rosemary & Co. Brush. So this is a size 1. Brushes really, you need a size 1 or a size 2 or a size 0. Anything smaller or bigger than that, you don't need that much. So I have got a size 2. I found the size 1. So we'll carry on with the size 1. I'll talk a little bit more about brushes in a separate video, I think. And brush care and cleaning, I'm not an expert, I have to say, but I'll talk about what we do, and I'll get Pete involved in that. And he can talk about what he does. It's different. He's a Games Workshop brush user, and I invested in some of these Kaninsky Sables from Rosemary & Co., which are, I think, really good for the price. And my painting hero, Zarastro, uses those and recommends those too. So I'm not sure it's the same series he used, but anyway, the Sable is the key element there. So that's the leather on that one. And by hot here, I mean, you know, it's probably average for most other places for the summer. I've just been talking to a friend of mine who lives abroad, just can't do heat in the UK. soon as it gets over a certain point, the country breaks down. The rails of the trains buckle. Everybody goes, whew, it's so hot today. We wouldn't be British if we didn't talk about the weather. Now, I do also find, when painting, I think I'm probably a particularly bad perpetrator of this misdemeanour. If it is a misdemeanour, that's missing great chunks of things that need painting. I don't know whether I've got particularly poor attention span or whether everybody does it or what, but I'll be painting really carefully, making sure I don't get on the wrong bits, and then I'll find I completely missed these bits of the jetpack, or one of the ones I did, I noticed I completely missed the leg of one of them. So obviously if you do that, you can go back at your leisure and paint. I shall probably, when I've painted all the base colours, go back and fill over in the blue bits that I missed. Now, I haven't actually looked at any of the source shots on the GW site for this paint scheme, so it may differ. Probably does differ, but I thought I wasn't going to try and look, because I was trying to do it with their paint box, which obviously they've used many different of their paint range, and we'll talk about the paint range in a bit more detail possibly in a moment. I may add in a couple as we go from the range, just because some things will be easier. I've hopefully got enough models to show you what I would do with my with other paints from the range, and what you could do with just having this base set. But I think, to be honest, if you've committed to this base set, you're probably in this for a reasonable length of time, and you're probably going to end up buying some more paint. That's the brown done there on that one and that one. So we'll just wait for that to dry and see whether we need another thin coat. I probably do. Not a great advert for the starter brush there, as you can see it's split, and that's painting sort of base coats of five models only, and it's gone. Possibly my brush care wasn't that great. I've got some cleaner, but you probably don't want to be buying cleaner at the beginning of your painting career. So you might want to pick up some other brushes. Games Workshop sell them, obviously. I think they're fine, they're not the best, but you're probably wanting a detail brush and a base coat brush as a minimum on top of the starter brush, and they're a little bit more expensive than these Rosemary & Co ones, which I ordered direct from them, but it will depend on the postage prices for you, whether that's worth it, but do check those out if you want to. All the Games Workshop ones are very good. So we're going to do some white. Now, what I would normally do for white is I would normally use Celestial Grey. This is a dropper bottle. I converted this into a dropper bottle a little while ago, because some of the grey-white paints are a bit thick. You can see that one's a bit gloopy. That's an old Thuan Grey. But anyway, so this is my Celestial Grey, and I would normally paint that as a white base. Now, there are a number of different ways to do white base. Zoroastro, where he does his Stormtroopers in the original ones, his original Stormtrooper video, he paints them white and then black washes them with Nuln Oil and then paints the white back on again, which is quite a labour-intensive way of doing it, and it works for Stormtroopers because you've got a definite black-white contrast. Other things, not quite so good, and actually what I found a lot of people do, and I found to be a very good way, is to build up layers of grey. So the grey is the base, and then you build up a slightly lighter grey on top of that, a thinner layer of that, and then and on top of that you actually paint pure white. We could just paint pure white on top and see how that goes, but I'm actually going to use a grey and then try and build up the white. So there's a bit of white. I'm going to use this old brush to mix up the paint, the one that I've decided isn't very good. One good thing about brushes that aren't very good is that they're good for mixing paint, because you don't want to use your nice pointed expensive brush for doing that. So we're going to make up a very light grey, and this can be a bit hit and miss, and I don't really know the right consistency. I would say I would normally just use Celestial Grey for this, but I'm going to try and get an approximation of the colour there, which I should probably fail miserably, to be honest, because this is the black. I can't remember what it's called, a Baden Black I think it's called, isn't it? Not Chaos Black. That's going to be too much, so let's put some there and then just mix that in. So that's already a bit too dark. Now this, I think the Celestial Grey has actually got a tinge of blue in it, or green maybe. my colour wheel skills are decidedly non-existent. But anyway, let's put some more white in here and pale it up a little bit. That's getting a bit closer. So this is a black. This is just on the black-white continuum, and you can see that the Celestra Grey has definitely got a tinge of something else. We're going to paint this on and we'll see how it goes. It may, I've never done this before, so it may work not at all, or it may look okay. I think this is probably a bit thin. It is a little bit thin. So I don't know if you can see on that helmet there, I actually splodged a load of blue on the helmet, but that's now covered over. Now obviously the black is going to take this grey paint hardest. When I say hardest, I mean it's going to need more layers under the black than it is over the white, just because of the much darker base tone. It used to be that painting over dark colours with colours like yellow were a nightmare, but the paint range is so much better now that actually even yellow is pretty good over black. Something I have taken to doing, and I should have mentioned before, if you have an old cork or an old paint bottle, as I've got in this case, with a bit of sticky tack on it, blue tack as we call it in the UK, you can actually just stick that guy on there, and then you can hold this, and actually it's a little bit easier to paint then. I kind of scoffed when I first saw people doing that, but it is actually easier to paint if you do it that way. And I'm going to paint that knee white. I'll leave the other knee red, but I'm going to paint the guard white. So that's what I was saying, you've got different areas you can kind of pick out as a sort of opportunity for some colour change. Just to give a bit of variation. So we've got I don't even know what that's called, but we've got a bit down here, which again I'm going to paint white. You can see here one on the back of this leg, one advantage of painting it with black is it automatically gives you some depth. Here I've just painted those blue, that's black in there, and it automatically got some depth, so it's going to be easier for shading when the time comes. And similarly across the backpack, there's some depth in there already, which you don't have on the white. The white you have to kind of get in there and paint it, because you can't leave it white, whereas you can leave it black. I appreciate that by the time this video goes out, a lot of people will have already painted 50,000 Primaris Space Marines. I am afraid I'm just not that quick. There's always something going on in our household, which is great, but it's not that conducive to painting. So that's that handguard done on that one. And move over to this one. The button now, I am going to do this as a variation of red and white, but actually I haven't quite decided what yet, so I'm going to paint all white. And then just go back and do this one as well. Oh, not there. Go back and do this one as well. And one other thing I forgot to do on the other one is I forgot to do the arm. I don't know what it's called, the Pauldrons. They have edges, and I thought they would be interesting to do in different colours. So I know there is a scheme in the book. And also doing this edge, I realised I've forgotten to paint the under there blue. So I really am not doing very well with these. But anyway, never mind. Hello AOS fans, I'm back. Going to do some more painting for you. I'm going to get on with these Space Marines. A bit of time has elapsed since I last recorded. We're still on the base coat here. I've done the white, which is looking very grey, and this is one of the black sprayed Space Marines, and then I've done the brown now. So I'm going to try and finish through the base colours as quickly as I can while remaining neat. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some red. Good old Mephiston red, one of my favourite colours of the Games Workshop palette. I'm not sure why, it seems to paint on nicely, I think, although sometimes sometimes over dark colours you have to apply a couple of coats, but that's alright. 2 thin coats, remember, is our watchword. Well, it's Duncan's watchword really, but Duncan from Games Workshop, Warhammer TV, does very good painting videos, probably better than this one if I'm honest. But anyway, we will plough on as though there are millions of you watching. So here we go, so I'm just going to apply some red on there like that, and then I've just chosen on this figure to do the red on the outside of the I'm not sure what they're called, the things that hold their foot armour on. Just ankle protectors. It's quite funny, it's only when you start talking out loud about what the videos might have in them that you realise you don't know the name of things. Okay, now a little note on brushes, because I think my brush, I've actually moved to this Kalinsky Sable Series 33 from Rosebery & Co. I think I last showed it on the last part of the video that I showed it up off camera because I'm an idiot. So anyway, so that's a Rosebery & Co. They're the brushes I use. They're not the most expensive, but they're fine for me. So already this is dried. It's a warm day again here in the UK. Already that's dried, so I can add another thin layer of paint there. Okay, I just painted on the wrong bit there as well. It's got a red stain. I'll touch that up in a minute. So if you're watching the video, Pete will cut out my, well, I'll probably put it as a blooper, cut out my brilliant painting error, but that's why that's appeared red. It's sort of one of the dichotomies of painting Warhammer figures. How do I paint them? Do I go my own way, or do I try and paint as per the Imperium rules? It's nice to be inventive. I think I prefer inventive. Don't like prescription in many days, in many walks of life. So it's nice to just go and do your own thing. Obviously, do an official paint job if you want to, but if you don't, just go for what you like. Okay, now here I've realised I haven't done enough blue up to the edge on that bit, so I have to touch that up blue later. It's going to need another coat of red as well. And I've noticed there I've missed some blue. Okay, so I don't want to play that red again because I've already messed that bit up. And then what am I going to do on the helmet as I go along? And I need to do the wrist pads as well, or the hand pads. So under here I'm going to do that red. And then looking under here I can see that I've missed some blue, and that my undercoat isn't that great, so I'll be touching that up before I move on to the shading stage. I need some blue there, I need some blue there, and I just need a little extra black underneath there for the undercoating. Right, so then the helmet. I've already painted on my white. I'm going to paint most of the helmet red. So having painted it white yesterday, I'm actually going to paint the bulk of this helmet red again. Now obviously it is easier to paint a single tone helmet. Whether you want to do that is up to you, but I'm trying to add a bit of variation in mine. Doing this also makes you realise how often you hum under your breath when painting. Anyway, there you go. So I've painted the helmet red there, and the Pauldrons, oops. The knee pads are red. Or another knee pad red. Give that a bit of extra touch up. On the back here I've done this red. This is going to need some work as well. So as I said, that will need a bit of touching up with the blue. I should do that later off camera. You don't need to see that, but yes, if you missed, oh, one other thing I have missed on the red is these what they call purity seals. Now the purity seals, Space Marines have these. Lots of them have them, little rosettes basically. I think I talked to them about them earlier on in the video, but I always paint those red. Now I might have added a bit of dark blue, or used corn red, a darker red, a more kind of rich maroon colour for the seal, but as we're using this basic paint set today, we'll go with the standard red, see what we can do with it in the next stage. There you go, so that is the base colours are almost coming together on that Primaris Marine. So next up is silver, and there are a couple of different ways of doing silver, and I shall show you those in a second. Okay then, so after the white and the red, we come to silver. For silver we use lead belcher, which is sort of gunmetal colour. Now, two approaches to this. One for the black figures, I'm going to show you how to do a dry brush. And just notice I splodged a bit of grey on there. I'll just touch that up. Yeah, so for the black ones, I'm going to use a silver dry brush over the black. The white ones, the silver ones, I'm going to paint the gunmetal directly on. Now you may see here I've actually already painted this bit. So I was trying to do some batch painting, and I got ahead of myself. But this is just I'll show you how to do this in a minute, but this is just a mix of, just an off black really. It's a mix of white and black, but only a tiny bit of white just to make it off black. And I'll show you why we do that a bit later on. Moving on, let's paint some silver. So, I think paints can be a bit of a pain. They normally need a good shake, and if any of these are weak in this set, it's not too bad actually. That's okay. It can be a bit like a sludge at the bottom, but that's alright. Get in there and just mix that onto your palette. There you go. I've done some silver earlier, so then we're going to paint this on the gun. I'm going to paint the Aquila, the eagle, on the front of the breastplate. I mean, you could choose to do that blue or white or red or any colour you wanted really, but I'm going to do mine silver. And what else am I going to paint? I'm going to paint the backs of the legs. Anywhere where there's this kind of hooping, they have, probably can't see on the camera there, but they have a kind of banding, almost like metal springs, and I kind of like those to be silver, and there's loads of those underneath the bottom area, so to speak. And I've painted that gun there. I've painted the same mix of black and white. Actually, black and white, off black again. But anyway, so paint the silver in there, and then these kind of tabs here, sort of springy things. Not sure what they are. They're like fixings for the armour maybe. Anyway, I'll paint those silver too. And I'm also going to paint the interior of the jets silver. Now, it's normally when painting these at this sort of stage, when you've got nearly all the colours on, that I personally really start to dislike my miniatures. There's something about the blocky base coat with no depth that's quite depressing. Now, particularly the white ones, because where you've missed the bits I've missed there, the white shows through and it looks unfinished because it is unfinished. And the splashes of paint that are overlapping, they look really bad, and you just think, oh goodness me, I spent ages doing this and it looks awful. And that, until we get to the next stage, the magical shading stage, it's quite often how it is. That's fallen off of it. I'm going to take that off. That quite often is the way that it does look really bad, and then shading, as I say, is like a magical formula for suddenly making your miniatures look okay. And then when you then do the sort of highlighting after that base coat, shading, highlighting, however you choose to do that, suddenly the miniatures look a lot better. And I have noticed that the black ones, I've never done them side by side, the black ones actually look a lot less bad than the white ones. The white ones seem to really show up the errors, and the black ones kind of, black hides a multitude of sins apparently. But what I will do is I'll show you the black method, if that's more interesting. I'll finish that off and show you the finished result. But I think showing you how to do the black will be more interesting. Now, this is an important technique, particularly for quick painting or painting lots of certain type of figure all at once. Dry brushing. And dry brushing pretty much does what it says on the tin. You use a dry brush to do your painting. Now I'm just trying to find where the starter brush was that I use in this set. The starter brush is actually quite good for dry brushing. Citadel do dry brushes. So actually, this is a small dry brush, Citadel do, and you can buy that, but it has a coarser material. But actually I think it's too thick for me. I still like to have a bit of control when I'm dry brushing, so I think that probably these days dry brush is deemed to be for larger areas like vehicles and things. Anyway, this I'm going to use to dry brush. Now, as I say, dry brush is pretty much what it says on the tin. So you get some paint on your brush, and then you discover that it's mostly dried out. So you put a bit more on your brush. You put some paint on your brush, get good coverage, and then basically you rub it all off. So you rub it off like that until there's almost none left. Now actually what I tend to do is I tend to use my hand. That's a really good way of saying it. So when nothing's coming off on your hand, but you can still see flecks on there. Nothing coming off on your hand. is that you can then brush it lightly over the area. Now remarkably, not always seems remarkable to me, the paint that is left on the brush, the sort of minuscule amount of paint that is left on the brush, starts to come off. And as you can see, it makes quite a dramatic difference for the application of almost no paint. So it's really quite a handy technique. So I'm just going to put some bit more in there. In this hot weather, it dries super fast. There you go, there's some paint coming off. Then you bother using the tissue this time. And don't tend to. My son always says, "Daddy, you shouldn't paint on your hand." And of course he's absolutely right. You shouldn't paint on your hand. Children watching. But it is a very effective way of wiping off the paint. So there you go. There's a classic case of do as I say and not as I do. And then we're going to do a bit more precision now. Try and get some smallish point on it. I'm going to do under the boot. And to be honest, that isn't brilliant up there because I've overdone some of the black with the blue, but it looks okay. It'll do. If you were being more precise, you would definitely revisit that. It doesn't matter if you get a little bit of silver on the edges. It's best to do your dry brushing earlier than, because if you do get your dry brushing, if it does end up in the wrong place, you'll be painting over it later. Only problem with dry brushing, or one of the problems with dry brushing, is the precision. It's hard to be precise, and B, it does give a kind of chalkiness to the figure. I think that's why highlighting has been sort of layer paints is now the in vogue way of doing it. Where I get in there and get under the Akila, that's quite tough. But anyway, so that's dry. That's basic dry brushing for you. And then I will actually, having done that, I will actually whiz around with some gunmetal on the outside of the boot, the sole. I should be doing that with all of the Primaris Marine figures on the sole of the shoe there. So there you go, that's the silver. And then, after you've done that, that's the miniatures more or less fully base coated. There are a couple of more things to do, which I'll show you before I finish this. You've got this paint here is Xandrie Dust, which has come open, which is not good. Now for Xandrie Dust, I'm going to paint the parchment of the what they called purity seals. I'm going to paint the parchment of the purity seals. I think the paint that might be a bit too thin. There you can see there's a purity seal. So there's a bit of parchment base off the seal. I'm going to, in normal words, I'd use a shanty bone or screaming skull, but I haven't got that in this starter set. It's a bit paler than this, but I reckon we'll get away with it. Mix some white in with it for highlighting later. I reckon we'll get away with it. So I'm going to paint that Xandrie Dust in there. And that's that. And then, when I've got the wet paint, I'm going to do this one. So yeah, this paint's a bit thin on the black. It's alright on the white, but on the black it's a bit thin, so it's going to need another layer in a second. Put that there. I'm going to use a different paintbrush for this. This is a small layer brush from Citadel. So I'm going to make some off-white. To do that, I'm going to get a little bit of white on my brush. I say I'm going to make some off-white, actually off-black really, sort of dark grey, and mix that in there. So that's some nice dark paint. It's always worth using an old brush to do your painting with. Just going to nip back to this one just to paint. This is dry now. Just to paint another layer of Xandrie Dust on there. Just a little darker than I would like, but I think that will be okay when we've finished. So there we go, that's that. And then, jumping back, grey paint. And for that, I'm going to paint on the gun, which I've actually done this one. So there, the gun holster on there. And they've got little panels here. I'm going to paint those. On the silver, where's the silver one gone? Here he is. I've done that one gunmetal. I have another silver one somewhere over here. There it is, yes. So I'm going to paint that magazine the same off black, just to give a bit of contrast on the gun. So it's not all silver. Okay, there we have it. That is actually most of the base colours. I've still got to finish the silver on that one. I've had quite a lot of touching up to do. There's a bit of blue I've overran. I noticed there was some places where I haven't got the silver in or the dry brush on that one. But I'm going to do that, and then I'll, they are all the base coats. So I will do that, and then I will show you the next stage, which is the shading. And that may well be a separate video. So anyway, that was the base colours done of my Primaris Space Marines. If you've got any questions, please leave them in the comments below. As you can see, I'm not the most neat or accurate of painters. So there's probably the better painters out there. If you've managed to stomach watching this, probably turning over in your grave if you're dead. Probably not if you were watching it. Yes, probably some of the better painters out there. Probably very upset with my painting technique, but for which I can only beg your forgiveness. But hopefully the results will be okay. So I'll see you in the next video, which will be shading. And this is where you realise you're painting on the wrong bit, because you're an idiot. Man alive. Now it does say in the book that these have specific colours for certain things, but they're my figures, I'll do what I like.